Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm Holly and I am so happy to be back here with you today. I do want to start off by saying that this topic is a tough one and it very well could be a trigger for you or someone you know that may be going through something very similar. But this is my journey on how I have overcome being in a domestic violence situation, severe depression, and a suicide attempt. So if you'd like to hear my story, then please keep watching. All right, so let me take you back to the year 1999. I had just graduated high school and I was getting ready to attend community college in the fall, and I was just having a great summer. And that is when I met him. Here he was, this amazing man who was charismatic, he was charming, he was hardworking, he had a house of his own. I was like, okay, girl, you just hit the jackpot with this one. Here is this incredible man who wants to spend some quality time with you. Now, the funny thing about red flags is that when you're in it, you don't really see it, or you choose not to see it rather. I'm sure you can relate to that as well. But here I was, this man just was pampering me like no one's business. He was taking me out shopping, he was buying me clothes, he was just doing all of these amazing things that I thought, man, I mean, this guy is really into me and I'm 19 years old. I'm just happy. And I'm like, oh, I've hit the jackpot. Well, a few months later, he had convinced me to move in with him and his family. Yeah, so crazy enough, he had let the house go that he had owned, wanted me to move in with him and his mom and his sisters. And my mom and dad were not happy about that at all. My mom was like, this is not a good decision for you. But as you all know, for those of you who have 19 or 20-year-olds, there is nothing that you are going to say to your child that is ever going to get them to think that what they're doing is the wrong decision, because they're adults at that point. And so I completely didn't listen to them. I decided to move in with him and his family. And I also decided not to go to school, and I didn't have a job. So it was, I don't know what position I was putting myself in, but it didn't matter because I was in love with him. And again, kind of looking at the red flags, I remember he used to make comments about the way I looked, even though he was buying my clothes and all of that. I was starting to feel this level of insecurity that I hadn't really felt before. About a year and a half into the relationship, I'm over here living with him and his family, and he convinced me to marry him. And so I was like, well, this is a great decision. Yeah, let's do that. But Holly, don't tell your parents about it because you know they're going to be disappointed. So you can deal with those repercussions later, is so I thought. And I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna do this. I'm walking out of the justice of the peace just thinking, man, I am now in love. I'm married. I can't wait to start this amazing life with this man. In October of 2001, I found out that I was pregnant. And I was elated. I was like, I can't believe it. I'm gonna be a mom. Like, my life, I just felt like couldn't get any better. And when I had found out I was pregnant, I started feeling a lot of pain though. I was suffering from some excruciating pain in my left side. And I went to the urgent care and they had confirmed, yes, in fact, you are pregnant. But the nurse on call was concerned about the pain I was feeling. And so she had suggested that I set up an appointment to go see a sonographer to do a ultrasound to see what was going on in my stomach. I called, I'd set up an appointment for a couple of days later. And later that night after I had left the urgent care, I was in the most pain I've ever experienced in my entire life. And I didn't know what to do. Like, I was like hurling on the floor, just not feeling good. I was throwing up. The pain was excruciating, but at the time, now I'm going back to 2001 in the small town I was from, the resources of the medical industry weren't where they are now. And I had my husband call, we had like a teledoc number where you can call these on-call nurses. And they had just said, chances are it's probably just her uterus expanding. That can be painful at times. She'll be okay. Have her take some Tylenol. She'll be all right. So that's what I did. I took some Tylenol. I finally wound up falling asleep and just still was not feeling great. That day that I was going to get my ultrasound done, I had spent the morning at my mom's house, and I remember showing up and just telling her, like, Mom, I am not feeling good. My left arm is really numb. I don't know what's going on. And she I was just like, I have an appointment tonight to get it figured out. But I remember taking a nap and just not feeling great at all. Like I just was in a really rough shape. And so later that evening I have my appointment and I go and they couldn't find anything in my uterus. And I was like, okay, like, what do you mean you can't find anything in my uterus? And the girl was like, yeah, we don't see anything. We're going to send this over to the doctor here. So immediately I get a call to go to the emergency room, and the doctors had told me that unfortunately I was going to be losing my baby because I was suffering from an ectopic pregnancy, and they were going to have to remove the baby immediately because it was putting me in a really bad spot. And so I was devastated. I couldn't believe it. I called my mom. I was in complete tears, and she immediately came down. Her and my aunt came down to see me and be there for me during my surgery. And I was told that the surgery was going to be pretty straightforward. It was going to be laparoscopic. They were going to go in through my belly button, take it all out, and then I should be healed up pretty well and be able to go home in a couple of days. And what I found out later was, after going under, when my left fallopian tube had ruptured with the baby, it had also ruptured my artery. And so I had been bleeding internally for a really long time, and that's why I was feeling numbness in my arms, because I had blood clots the size of golf balls stuck to my spine. And so what was supposed to be an easy surgery turned into a major overhaul, a C-section done to mend everything, get the blood clots taken out. I had to have a blood transfusion. I was just in rough shape. And so when I finally come out of having my surgery and I'm a little bit more coherent, they're explaining to me everything that happened. Like, I was just like in complete shock. And of course I had symptoms. Because had I just gone to the hospital when I first started feeling this, they probably could have stopped what was really going on majorly, but that's beside the point. I also get news that the likelihood that I could have children was going to be very minimal at that point. And I was completely heartbroken. I'm 21 years old. I've got my whole life ahead of me. I just had this major surgery. I have all this news that there is a possibility that I couldn't be a mom. So of course I'm thinking like, well, what's my worth if I'm not attached to being able to be a parent? So needless to say, my emotional state took a turn for the worst. I was suffering from what I think was some major postpartum depression. And I remember one night I was just bawling my eyes out. Like, I could not get it together. And I had seen a side of my ex-husband come out that I had never seen before. And he got so frustrated with me and my crying that he slapped me across the face. He grabbed me by the neck and he threw me up against the wall. And his words to me were, "You need to get over it already, or I will make you." And I was in complete shock. I didn't even know what to do at that point. Now, I had never been physically abused growing up. And to see somebody put their hands, or rather not see, but to feel someone put their hands on me because of my emotional state, I was terrified. I was like, what just happened? Like, what did I do to deserve this? And like most abusers, when it happens the first time, and he realized what was going on, he immediately like dropped his hands, apologized, said, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. This wasn't what I wanted to do. I don't know how to handle it, Holly. You were just completely out of control. I didn't know what to do. I panicked. I promise you that it will never happen again." And of course, I take that as, of course, this is my fault. This is my fault that I'm in a completely horrible emotional state. Of course it's my fault that you just put your hands on me, slapped me across the face, and tried to choke me up against a wall. Of course I deserve that. But I was like, you know what? It's okay. It's okay. You know what, Holly? It's okay. It happened once. It was because of you. If you would have just not been so emotional at the time, everything would have been fine. He promises it's never going to happen again. So I believed him. And now I didn't tell my parents about what happened because that first time I thought it was a one and done. Well, what I've now found about abusers and now having been in an abusive situation like that is that once it happens the first time, it's going to continuously keep happening over and over again, as long as you allow it to happen. And I was terrified to tell my parents. I didn't know who to talk to. And now at this point, the relationship had continued to get worse. The physical abuse started to get worse. The emotional abuse was completely out of control. The manipulation, the gaslighting that was happening, the feel that it was all of my fault, that if it wasn't for me acting the way that I was acting and doing what I was doing, that none of this would have happened if it wasn't because of me and how I can't control my emotion at that time. And these words that kept coming through my head were, "You made your bed, Holly, now you lay in it." Now, my mom has never said anything like that to me before. I've never heard those words come out of anyone's mouth. They were just words that I kept saying in my head over and over again because I felt like I was the one who was responsible for this happening. And when you're hearing that and you're telling yourself this story and you have somebody who's threatening to kill you and somebody who's threatening to kill your family or call the police on you as it's being your fault, that manipulation, that abuse that's happening behind the scenes, you almost feel like you don't have anywhere to go. And that's exactly how I felt. And my mom started to notice, or my mom had noticed, I don't want to say started, my mom noticed for a long time that there was something going on. But I think she was really afraid to open up that conversation with me as well because she didn't know how I was going to react to it. And she had made a comment to me shortly after, like we were living in an apartment at this point, and she had said, Holly, I think you should, she's like, Holly, I think you should come home. Like, it's okay that you come home. And, again, now having been married, being in this relationship, I knew that that was an option, but I was like, I need to figure out how to work through this. Like, I'm an adult. Like, I can't let somebody else bail me out. I'm prideful here. I'm an adult. Like, I need to figure it out. And I'll never forget one night I was just, of course, we were arguing. My husband and I were in this major argument, and I was done. I was done. I had this thought that, I would rather be dead at this point than I would be stuck in this relationship with this man who was going to continue to kill me or he was going to continue to hurt me over and over again. And I don't want to go home. I can't do it. And so I remember locking myself in the bathroom, and I found a bottle of muscle relaxers that weren't mine. And I was like, okay, I'm done. I'd rather be dead than deal with what I'm dealing with right now. So I took these muscle relaxers, and I remember him pounding on the door saying, I can't deal with you. I'm done. I'm calling the police. I'm doing all this. And I just was crying horribly sitting in the bathroom. And he finally got the door open, and he said to me, he's like, I'm not the reason that you're gonna die. And he left me there, and he walked out and left the apartment. And I remember sitting there on the bathroom floor just hyperventilating, crying, like, what was I doing? And then all of a sudden, I hear this voice tell me, throw them up. Throw them up. You're not going to end your life like this. You need to throw them up. And I knew that was Jesus there with me at that time. And so I did. I listened to the voice, and I said to myself, if I wake up tomorrow, it's time for me to change. And so by the grace of God, I had the opportunity to wake up the next morning. And I called my mom and I say, Mom, I need you to come get me. I need to grab my things. I'm coming home. That was the best decision I ever made because I never looked back after that. But you know, as I reflect back on this girl that was 23 years old, now I'm 43 now. And I think back to this young, vibrant young woman who just had her whole life ahead of her. Sometimes it takes being at the very bottom for you to realize like your worth. And that's how I felt. Like I needed to hit that rock bottom to pull it together and get myself out of a really tough position. And you might be going through that too. You may be in a really, really tough situation and you're thinking to yourself, like, what am I going to do? How am I going to get out of this? And I want to encourage you to reach out and I want you to go. I want you to find somewhere safe that you can go. If you have kids, I know it's harder when you have kids, but man, you know, if I look back on my life and I realize what had happened to me, and if I would have stayed, like, where would my life have been now? Because here's what I know, is that I should have left after that first incident. And I know that. But I chose not to. Because I was just confident that I knew that things were going to get better. And they didn't. But when you're being manipulated, and you're being told that you're not worthy, and you're being told that people don't love you, and you're being told that nobody's going to be there for you, you don't know how to feel any other way. Your mind starts to play tricks on you, and sometimes you need to hit rock bottom in order for you to understand to get out of your own way. And now I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I didn't go through more issues after that. Like my life didn't always get better. Now I will say, well, after leaving that relationship, I vowed that a man would never touch me again like that. And I am proud to say that that has not happened. Now, I'm not going to tell you that I haven't been emotionally abused, but that's a whole other story. If you guys want to hear more about that, I can talk to you more about that as well. But the reason I wanted to share this with you all too is because I look back on that time of my life and I'm just, as weird as it might be to say this, thankful that it happened. Because I feel like sometimes if you don't go through that hard grit, that hardness in your life, it doesn't mold you. I don't know, it's so hard to say it. Like I used to look at my miscarriages as a negative thing. After I lost my second baby, I really had even more of a hard time. But as I look back at the loss of my children, I keep thinking to myself, like, especially my daughter, my first one, because I do feel like my baby that I had lost, she was my little girl. What she did for me, she saved our life. Hers and mine, because she knew that if she was brought into this world, her life was going to be miserable. And her mom's life was going to be miserable, and her mom wouldn't have been the woman that she should have been for her daughter. And I think if she were to look at her mom now, that she's in heaven and she looks down on me, I think she'd be proud of the mom that I became, or the woman that I became because of her. You know, the other thing that I want to say is that, you know, when you're going through it, it's really hard to see that positive light at the end of it and the lessons that you learned. And what I realized at that time, now in hindsight, looking back at my life, I'm very blessed for that time because it has made me the woman that I am today. To my ex-husband, who will probably never see this video, but if you do, I want to say I forgive you and thank you. Because if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here now as this strong, capable, and confident woman that I am. And to my babies that are in heaven, everything I do and everything I strive to be here on this earth is to get closer to you. Because you deserve a good mama. You'd think after 20 years it gets easier. It doesn't. You just learn how to mend, I guess. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this, and I hope that me sharing my story gave someone you know and love, or you yourself, that confidence to just make the call and take the first step. Because no one deserves to be abused. No one deserves to be physically abused. No one deserves to be mentally abused. You don't deserve it. Your kids don't deserve it. I know, trust me, I know it's easier said than done, but I believe in you and you can do this. You've got this. And if you stayed and you watched this entire video, I do want to say thank you, because you didn't have to, but you chose to. And you chose to not only give me your time, but you also chose to give me your energy. You allowed me to share my story with you, and you, believe it or not, have given me confidence to keep going and keep posting day in and day out. So I want to say thank you again. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. If there's any other tips or videos that you would like to see from me, please let me know. If there's more around my journey of therapy, my journey of battling anxiety and depression, my journey of how I was able to heal and finally mend my inner child wound, more about my day-to-day life as single, 43, happy. If you want to know more about that too, please let me know. I am an open book here. This is really about friends, connecting with friends. And yeah, just overall, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your support behind the scenes. Thank you for listening to me talk about this really tough subject. And I appreciate you more than you will ever know. And I will see you in my next video. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care. Bye-bye.